Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I am before you with another painting process video where I demonstrate how I created these Anthurium flowers using gouache. Now, if you are familiar with my channel, you probably know that gouache is not the usual medium that I work with. I generally work with watercolors, however, recently I found gouache to be interesting equally. The way that I work with gouache is very similar to watercolors. In fact, I just see them as opaque watercolors, and I bought a set of gouache tubes that I squeezed into a palette and allowed it to dry completely. And whenever I want to use it, I just spray some fresh water on it, on the dried paints, and allow it to soak in and soften the paints a bit. And then I just use it like I would normally use watercolors. The paper that I'm using today is not cotton paper or watercolor paper. In fact, it's just a generic sketchbook. And I found this to be equally good while working with gouache. It's just slightly textured with no peaks, no very sharp texture or anything of that sort. It's mostly just plain paper and that helps hold the water quite well. It's not a low weight paper. I believe it's around 200 GSM, which I found to be sufficient for the washes that I'm doing. Just like I would with watercolors, for this painting I started by wetting the entire area of the flower that I want to paint with water first. Then I went in with some of my pigments, and the pigments I'm using for this painting are primarily these pinks and greens with some added reds and blues wherever I want deeper colors. Once the first layer of paint is dry, on the first flower I start to layer on top with the pink. I'm sorry, but this time I do not have the exact colors with me, the names of the colors. However, if you are painting along and you would like to know the names of these exact pigments, I could find those for you. Just feel free to ask in the comments below and I'll look it up for you. I don't know very much about plants, however, what I read is that Anthuriums are flowering plants and the flowers are just modified leaves. Below here I have a leaf which I'm painting, and to add depths I go into my blues and layer over the lighter greens. Layering just as I would watercolors. First going in with a wet layer, then allowing it to dry completely, then layering further colors on top using either wet on wet or wet on dry for the second layer. Let's block some shadow beneath where the flower is so that it has a more realistic look. And the underside of the flower, I want to give it a nice pink and a slight bit of green just so that fold catches attention. I think in botanical paintings, these folds give a lot of character to the painting and make them stand out. I'm leaving a thin, dry layer between where I'm laying the paints and where it's folding into the leaf, and this is because it gives a nice effect, I feel. The small white area separating the top of the leaf from the bottom of the leaf. Okay, so now it's time for the wet on dry layers. These are more solid textures, not as smooth as the first layer, which was wet on wet. And I quite like the effect I've got here. So I'm going to repeat the same on the other flower as well. Adding depth with some purples now. Just a very dilute purple mixed into my pink for a tonal range that I would not get with just pink alone. And here I build more depth by going in stronger with the purples. Let's make some of the borders stand out with a thick paint painted along a line along the edge, and I blend the edges just so that it looks smoother. But I make sure that those folds are very distinct on my painting. This final fold here and where it's overlapping with the leaf on 2D paper, I would like to make it really pink and some deep greens so that it's very clearly visible. It's these tiny elements in botanical paintings that add a lot of joy to the work. Going wet on the leaf, again leaving a thin transparent line in the middle to give the impression of veins. And I'm also softening certain edges for a more smooth and realistic look. I don't know if the stem from my reference picture was pink, however, I just wanted to have fun with this painting, so I added some pink to the stem. Darkening further the part of the leaf that is underneath the flower because it's not getting any light. Rather, I want it to be in shadows. And once I'm done with the leaf, I go ahead to paint the center of the flowers. This part that projects from the center, I figured out that it is called the spadix, I believe. So the spadix and the tiny dots there are on it are tiny flowers, is what I read on the internet. Don't know how true it is, but those of you who know more about these flowers, please feel free to add any valuable information in the comments below. I have this acrylic marker that I like to use much better than transparent white ink or even white gouache because I feel that no matter how intense my gouache is, I just do not get the opacity that I need with the white. So the other I have started to opt for acrylic markers, specifically this one which is a cream color for adding white highlights on my painting. I'm adding these highlights wherever the veination on the flower is visible, and also I'm doing the same for the leaf now. Let's also add some dots here and there. Where we have our greatest darks is where we want to put our lightest shades too, because it helps make those parts stand out. It's always that way in watercolors and even in real life, that the parts that stand out have the highest contrast. With a very dilute mix of pink, I'm adding some further veinations onto the flower. Let's do it for the other one too. And I feel that the contrast is still not enough near the center of the flower. It could stand out more and look better. So going with another wet wash of the dilute purple that I have been using. Okay, let's do white gouache after all. So let's add these dots that look like gaps on the leaf, or rather holes on the leaf, and that gives a nice look too. With this, our painting is complete, and I hope you enjoyed watching this. See you next time.